Welcome, welcome, one and all, to what may prove to be one of the greatest shows on the face of the earth, Money and Change. My name is Ira Robinson. As always, we're here with Stu Shear. Hello, Stu.
Hi, Ira. How you doing this windy, rainy day?
Feeling a little bit better today, finally. So maybe we're on the mend.
And the gremlins are out of the house?
Pretty much.
Oh, okay. Well, a little Mucinex and, a little high-powered brew, and that'll take care of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, last night I was down in Cincinnati with a friend and who was having surgery, and we got caught in some massive rain on the way back. And then later on, we had a tornado that was about 7 miles away from where I lived. And of course, everybody in town always gets worried about it. And, a long time ago, I was within 300 feet of a small one. So I kind of know that we have some time to wait
Yeah.
before we hit the shoulder. So, luckily it didn't hit me, but it was 300 feet away. And that was a shocker. So I really have sympathy for the people that got hit, though, around here. Some businesses were really damaged out around the Parkway area of Dayton and Medway. And, tornadoes are never fun to be in and to clean up the damage afterwards. And it's quite a mess. But that's why you have insurance companies and rescue people. And so I just hope that everybody gets along pretty well after the damage has been done last night. Well, anyhow, we have some shout outs, and I have a big shout out to give to Mercy West Hospital in Cincinnati, in the Cheviot area in western Cincinnati, and a big shout out to Dr. Brian Moran for some very good hand surgery on a friend of mine, and a funny guy, Dr. Bill Berkmeyer. This guy should be on the stage. I mean, he had the nurses laughing. He had my friend and I laughing, and she was gasping for air. So was I, and he was just having a wild time. And that's a fantastic hospital, a fantastic staff, and a very good kitchen, too, because I went down and had some lunch. And, some of the best guacamole I've ever had. So, hats off to the guys at Mercy West Hospital. A big shout out to WCET FM 101.7 in Columbia, South Carolina. And they carry our show, and we're very appreciative of that. L&M Radio Network with Michael Vera. We've been working with Michael Vera for the last 4 years and a couple of months. And I'll tell you what, he's a nice guy, has some pretty good shows on, and he puts up with some of my antics. But hats off to L&M Radio Network for carrying us this length of time. Also, Open Eyes Radio Network. I think I know somebody that works for them.
Indeed.
Is he a hacker?
No, but he does hack up a lung once in a while, at least lately.
That's what I was getting at. Well, I'll give you a second to plug your works.
Great. So you guys can find the archives of this show as well as a lot of my other shows over there at openeyesnetwork.com. And if you want to check out any of my books, you guys can do that over at my website, originalworlds.com. I've got a lot of books that are available for sale. I've got 3 that are on the track to be published so far this year, and maybe a 4th if I finish this one in time. So it's pretty interesting.
How can you do all that? I can only write The Wrinkle City, a whole 10 pages with pictures once a month. And you can come out with 4 or 5 books.
Yeah, pretty much.
Do you sleep at all?
Barely. Usually about 6 hours a night if I'm lucky.
6?
Yeah.
I mean, you want to be up writing all that time. I was expecting probably 1 or 2 hours of sleep. Holy cow. Well, another shout out that we've got is the University of Findlay. Of course, they're on summer break right now, but they do have some summer classes there. www.findlay.edu, where they prepare their students for meaningful careers. Then a big shout out to Brad, the Big Family Homestead on YouTube. And, they have a little business on the side, and they are demonstrating Thrive freeze-dried foods from thrivelife.com. So, big shout out to Brad. He's looking to relocate to a bigger farm type entity. And I've been trying to get some leads on that so he can possibly move a little bit closer to this area, because the two of us in this county would drive people just totally insane. So anyhow, Brad and the Big Family Homestead. Check him out on YouTube. Well, before we get started on the show, we always have to do a disclaimer, and the information contained in this presented material is from the posting of news agencies on the internet and are not necessarily the views or opinions of the owners of this program. We are not responsible for and expressly disclaim all liability for damages of any kind arising out of use, reference to, or reliance on any information contained in this broadcast. The information provided is not offered as financial advice, financial planning, or for investment purposes. So you want to use this information at your own risk. Now, from the currency chart at XE.com at 4 o'clock today, the euro gained a penny against the U.S. dollar. It's now at $1.12. The Great British pound stayed the same at $1.29. The Australian dollar and the Canadian dollar are at 74 cents. The Swiss franc is at $1.02, almost to $1.03 against the dollar. The Japanese yen, it hasn't changed in probably 10 weeks. It's still at 8/10 of a cent. The Chinese yuan is still at 14.5 cents. And also I heard that Moody's downgraded China due to some of their, I believe it was loans. So, you might want to check into that. The currency hasn't changed. It's still at 14.5 cents. The Chinese weren't too happy about it from what I heard, but hey, that's the way life goes. The Kuwaiti dinar still stayed the same at $3.29 to the dollar, and the Vietnamese dong, well, the wheelbarrow got just a little bit lighter. Last week it was 22,694.91 dong to the dollar. Now it's 22,692.25 dong to the dollar. So there was just a slight change. Bitcoin, oh wow. Bitcoin has really started to take off. Last week it was 1,824.60 Bitcoin to the dollar. And today at 4 o'clock it was 2,359.68 dollars to the Bitcoin. Can you imagine that? $2,359.68.
It's definitely crazy, and I've seen a lot of people talking about wanting to buy Bitcoin right now or get involved with it because it's running so high and everything, and it just keeps going up and up. And I just keep warning them, just bear in mind Mt. Gox, because if you don't know anything about it, look it up, because it'll be some very revelatory information for you, about what really can happen with this particular cryptocurrency. But I know a lot of people are getting into the cryptocurrency. I'm just kind of warning them, you might want to watch out for it. Be careful with it.
Well, I've got a good story on that coming up, and you won't believe what they're doing in South Korea, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. Silver, hey, it jumped. Last week it was $16.61. It's up to $17.16 an ounce. Platinum went up a little bit. It's now at $948.75 an ounce, and palladium also went up just a tiny bit. It's $771.42 an ounce. Now, before you go out and invest your hard-earned money in any type of precious metal, please do this. I mean, if you only remember one thing that I've stressed for 4 years, pay down your debt, put some money aside, buy some long-term food that's good for maybe 25 years. If you want to go to thrivelife.com, that's fine. If you want to go to, beprepared.com or Emergency Essentials, that's fine. If you want to go to the LDS store, that's fine. But get some long-term food, okay? Every time you go to the grocery store, hey, spend an extra $5 and get a couple more cans of soup or beans or rice or whatever and store it. Those cans will probably be good for about 5 years. So you want to get some long-term food. Also, you want to store plenty of water. You want to go ahead and store ways to preserve water um, to make sure that you can drink it. A Berkey water system is great. There are other systems out there, Life Straws, whatever. But you want to be able to do that. Also, you want to make sure you have plenty of your medications around. Make sure you have a good first aid kit and not something that you go to Wally World and you open it up and it's got, maybe 500 Band-Aids, but nothing else of any use. You want to find out what a good first aid kit is. And you can go to the dollar store or Dollar Tree and get gauze and Band-Aids and all kinds of stuff to go in your emergency first aid kit. You want to make sure you have that. You want to make sure you have your medications. You want to make sure that you have vitamins. Because in a grid down situation, if you don't have vitamins, you're in a world of hurt. Because what you're going to be eating isn't the same as what you would normally be eating. And so you need to supplement with vitamins. And you need to take care of yourself. Make sure you have plenty of batteries around. With tornadoes and bad weather, I mean, we're talking about radios. We're talking about flashlights, camping lights, kerosene lamps, the whole bit. You have to think about that stuff. And that's why I preach it a lot. And maybe I'm preaching to the choir. I'm not really what you call a prepper, but I do want to be prepared in case there is an emergency and I do need light. I do need some type of communication. I do need food. I do need water. I just don't prepare for me, myself, and I. Those are my three good buddies. Am I multi-personality type complex there?
Could be.
Well, me, myself, and I. Well, anyhow, I also prepare for about 4 other people or 5 other people to make sure that if grid goes down, I can take care of my parents, my sister, my friend across the street, a neighbor if they're in need. I guess I'm just a good old nice guy. But, hey, you got to be prepared. And speaking of prepared, after you prep for everything, then you can go out and get your precious metals and make sure that you invest in real precious metals you can hold in your hand. Don't go out and get these silver certificates or gold certificates because it's pieces of paper. It's just paper. You go to turn it in, hey, they could be closed and all you have is paper. Put it up on the wall or use it for toilet paper, but it's paper. That's all you're going to have out of it. You're never going to get your stuff back. Gold and silver have been sold, I don't know how many times over with the certificates. You want to have physical gold, physical silver, physical platinum, even physical copper. Store it in a safe place. Well, with everything that's going on, this last week we had some stuff going out at the Hanford Nuclear Facility in Washington State. And remember, they had a tunnel collapse? Well, now they had another release of radiation again. And that appeared in Zero Hedge. And it says, everybody's freaked. Washington Nuclear Facility admits second radiation leak. If I was around Hanford, I'd be moving. And the report said the tank is known as an AZ-101 and was put into service in 1976. The tank life was expected to be 20 years. And now it's been holding this hot, boiling radioactive and chemically contaminated waste for 41 years. Gee, why hasn't the government done anything about it? That's the first question I'd be asking. And I'd be going back and say, okay, the Bushes, why wasn't anything done? Clinton, why wasn't anything done? Obama, why wasn't anything done? That stuff is going to cut loose again, and they've tried to repair the tunnel from what I've heard by putting more dirt on top as if that's going to help. So now you have to be prepared. So then what do? Well, you can't breathe the air and you can't let the stuff get on you if you're around it. So your best bet is to get some type of a gas mask with a filter. Stay inside. Don't let the stuff get on you because it can make you really sick. And also, you want to have some Iosat tablets. And you can look all this stuff up. And I think I have some links on the website, moneyandchange.weebly.com. That's MONEYANDCHANG .weebly.com. Check out the website. Tell your friends about the website. Plenty of information there for people to use. But according to this report, radiological monitoring showed contamination on the unit that was 3 times the planned limit. 3 times. And the government isn't really doing that much about it. BP Earthwatch, check them out on YouTube. They've been covering it. It gets kind of scary. They have people out there. So if you live in the Washington, Oregon area, you want to keep your eyes on Hanford because it's a mess. Well, Zero Hedge had a good one. Bitcoin explodes, trades above $4,000 in South Korea. Is that insane? $4,000.
Goodness.
I know. And this was just today, and it said in recent weeks, it's been Japanese demand that has driven the exponential rise in Bitcoin. But recently, as Cointelegraph reports, it's been South Korea. Overnight saw Bitcoin prices explode once again, smashing through $2,500, $2,600, and $2,700 for the first time. And as Cointelegraph.com reports, South Korean Bitcoin traders are facing asking prices of $4,500 as the virtual currency's price continues to surge. Order books from domestic exchange Coin1, COINONE, lists a current price of 4,254,000 won, or basically $3,805 per Bitcoin, within a 24-hour high of $4,494. And as Bitcoin reports, Bitcoin.com, the region has also been blossoming with startups dedicated to Bitcoin remittance and financial tech advancement. Now that's scary. Good grief, can you hold Bitcoin in your hand? No. Where do you put it? In a Bitcoin wallet. Well, where is it? It's on my computer. It's electronic. I can put it into a thumb drive. Well, where's it stored? It's stored out there in the web. Can you trade with it? Yeah, you could trade with it. But what happens if you get another Mt. Gox situation? That's GOX, where it suddenly disappears and nobody knows where the money went. You're out of luck. Like some people say, SOL. So don't get involved in it. It is too volatile, way too volatile. And it's scary. So, I mean, that's my advice. Just stay the heck away from Bitcoin. It sounds great. And you get suckered in, and then all of a sudden, something happens like Mt. Gox, and you're totally out of luck. You have no Bitcoin. That's the same thing with electronic money. You know, everybody wants you to use your credit card, or you have a debit card that you use. And you might have a couple $1,000 if you're lucky on your debit card, and you go out and you use it someplace like maybe Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever, or you're going to McDonald's or Wendy's or Taco Hell or someplace else, you know, and you use that card. Well, what happens if somebody has a skimmer or an employee is a little bit, shall we say, on the shady side? All of a sudden, what you have in that card, there's nothing. They've drained it. You can't use it. You can't buy anything. How do you think you would feel if that happened? Well, it's the same thing with Bitcoin. You're out of luck. At least with physical gold and silver and even paper money, I mean, you're better off. At least I think so. I don't know about Ira. I mean, he may say, hey, it's fine. I don't know. What do you think?
uh, maybe.
What do you mean, maybe?
Maybe. It's all a weird situation, to say the least.
Yeah, it's like people always say, there's always a village idiot. And in my case, I say, yeah, there's always a village idiot. Every town has to have a village idiot. But why am I surrounded by a lot of village idiots in this town?
Yeah, I
We're
mean,
overly blessed with them.
which why are we having all of them come from the towns around, right? And why are they all surrounding me at this present moment?
Yeah, it's like we're the only sane ones here. The town clowns, the village idiots. Oh, speaking of village idiots, the Department of Health and Human Services. Oh, did I call them village idiots?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, well, according to Breitbart, they released a new report that reveals that individual health insurance premiums doubled under Obamacare. If you want to keep your doctor, you can keep your doctor. It'll cost you a lot less. Liar of the year? Well, anyhow, health insurance premiums doubled since 2013, the year before many Obamacare regulations and mandates took effect. The Obama administration compiled the data for the report, which was produced by the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Planning and Evaluation. HHS spokesperson Ale Marre, Marre with an accent. I don't know if they really have an accent or not, but anyhow, it's Marre. With data that shows average premiums doubling nationwide and Americans paying nearly $3,000 more for health insurance per year, this report is a sobering reminder of why reforming our healthcare system remains a top priority. And according to the report, an average individual insurance premium more than doubled from $2,784 per year in 2013 to $5,712 on healthcare.gov in 2017. That amounts to a 105% increase in health insurance premiums. All 39 states using healthcare.gov experienced increases in individual market premiums from 2013 to 2017. Roughly 2/3 of states using healthcare.gov had 2017 premiums doubled compared to 2013 health insurance premiums. 3 states, including Alaska, Alabama, and Oklahoma, saw premiums triple. The government couldn't even run a whorehouse in Nevada without screwing it up. And now you give them health care. I hate to be that blunt about it, but government can't run things
Yeah, I mean,
successfully.
something that really cannot fail, they failed at, right?
Oh, yeah, big time. They couldn't even run a McDonald's franchise. They couldn't even run a Wendy's franchise. They couldn't even run a Band-Aid station. Let's face it. I mean, healthcare in America, and I argue this with a lot of my friends, they say, well, over in Europe, they have so much better healthcare. Not necessarily so. If you want to pay private, man, you're in like Flynn. You can get it.
Yeah, sure, exactly. I mean, one of the problems with the free healthcare is, or the single payer kind of system, like they keep trying to push here, is the waiting time that people have to go through is exorbitant compared to what it is here in America. Number one, and it's bad here in America. You especially when you're waiting on a specialist, but just wait on a specialist in Europe, for instance, it can take quite a bit of time. And there are clinics and hospitals built on the Canadian-U.S. border for a reason. A lot of Canadians come here looking to get their healthcare supplemented because they're not getting enough of what they need there. You see what I mean? It's on and
Well,
on and
yeah.
on. There are problems. I mean, it's unwieldy and it's falling under its own weight. It's barely surviving, right?
Well, then we have a problem here with the cost of medications. So a lot of people get on the bus and they take these bus rides, or they fly to Detroit, for example, and then they take a bus over to Windsor, Ontario, and they get the drugs there and then come back across the border.
Same thing happens for Mexico too. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine that said, well, I need to have some tooth work done. And I said, okay, where are you going to have it done? He lives in Arizona. He says, I'm going to go to Mexico. I said, why Mexico? He said, well, I can get it half the price.
Yeah. If
And I
not
said, is
better.
the quality as good? He said, yeah, I've been there before.
Yep.
And I said, well, how do you handle it? When the doctor says open wide, he says he has a translator, else he speaks perfect English, depending on who you go to. So, I mean, healthcare is one of what's really dragging healthcare down in the United States, and I swear by it, is you have a lot of illegal aliens, not only from Mexico or other countries, but they're into the health system and they're clogging up the emergency rooms. And that's their primary way of getting, taken care of in an emergency. Number one, they're here illegally. If you were in another country illegally, you wouldn't even get treated. You'd be deported, exported. Yes, you'd be exported, all right. Um, Here in the States, you have an emergency provision that if you don't have insurance, the hospitals have to take care of you. They have to. But you take a look at other systems in other countries, yeah, there's a waiting list. You have to wait for your specialist. Sometimes you get very good care, sometimes you don't. And sometimes you have to go to another country to get better health care. For example, you could leave the United States and probably go to Singapore and have an excellent heart surgeon work on you for probably half the price. The only reason the price is up in the States is insurance and all the rigmarole that you have to go through, insurance, and they have a staff of people to cover all of that. All the doctors and the hospitals, they have all these insurance people that go through coding and so forth to meet the federal guidelines. If we didn't have the federal government involved, that would be a lot less paperwork. So, it's something to think about, but it's healthcare in America. Luckily, hey, we found a good doctor for my friend's hand surgery. He's a very good orthopedic surgeon. Did we have to wait a little bit? Yeah, about a month, so we could get scheduled in and she could go through all the tests and everything to go in. And that necessitated, 4 trips to Cincinnati, which is a 200-mile trip round way. But that's fine. I have friends in Cincinnati, so we met with them and had dinner. It wasn't totally wasted. It was an excellent facility, great staff. So, you have to look for good hospitals. You have to look for good doctors. They said, well, why couldn't you do it locally? No, the local hospital here isn't equipped. They don't have the staff to do it. I hate to say it. It's kind of a Band-Aid station. But anyhow, you have to go to a bigger city to find better hospitals. The nurses are nice and so forth, but you just don't have the doctors that are probably trained to do what these specialists are. And so, healthcare in America yet needs to be changed. But to do that, we need to change the insurance structure, the paperwork structure. And my thing is to get the government out of healthcare. And eventually, I will rewrite my Americare plan.
That'd be
And
good.
I have to figure a way so somebody can't go in and mess with my website because I will post it there. It's a very simple plan. It's very simple. You take what your state taxes are, which takes your net minus what your federal is, and you take that net You have a driver's license. They put the amount of that into the driver's license, which has a little magnetic stripe on it. You have that input, and then you go to the doctor, put it in a reader, and it says, okay, you make X, you're going to pay 1.5% of that to the doctor, to the healthcare provider. It goes to the hospital and the doctor, because generally the doctors are in with the hospital. And your treatment's taken care of out of that. The only thing that you would need would be critical care hospitalization for something that's catastrophic.
Right.
And you could get insurance for that, and you could get it over across the border. In other words, I could get an insurance company out of Kentucky or Tennessee or
Right.
Florida.
Which is one of the biggest things that should have been done with the whole Obamacare, the ACHA, all this stuff. All they would have to do is just make it so that the insurance companies can sell across state lines like auto insurance has done. That's what lowered the auto insurance rates all the way around, was the ability for them to cross state lines and make it so that pre-existing conditions don't count towards the premiums. That's all that needed to be done to begin with. We didn't need to spend, literally billions upon billions of dollars on Obamacare, including over $1 billion for the website alone, which still has issues. I mean, and we paid a
Well,
Canadian company to do, by the way, too. But anyways,
yeah,
yeah.
but you take a look at it, and the whole thing is that driver's license. You make it a requirement that your address has to be current on your driver's
Right.
license every year. Okay. If you move, then you have to update your driver's license. That's the key thing. The other thing is that if you go to vote, hey, you've got your driver's license. You also have a medical card right there. It's all in the same thing. It's very simple to do. And when it says we'll pay your doctor, okay, if you only make so much, let's say $2,500 or $25,000 a year, and your payment might be $300, $400, $500, depending on how much you make a year. So you pay that either upfront one payment or two payments of, let's say, 250 a payment biannually, or you break it up into monthly payments. Okay, and you can do that. If you have a SNAP card or an EBT card, it's automatically deducted out of there and put into your Medicare payment, and your Medicare card covers that. It's very simple. You take it out of government. You don't need to pay government to do it. All you need is your driver's license. The only step that government is going to do is input what your taxes were, what you had to pay, and then you're only going to pay 1.5% of that. If you need any critical care, super catastrophic insurance, then that's up for you to purchase. But once I get all this written out, hey, I'm going to put it back up on the website, and hopefully nobody messes with it. And if I could do it, maybe I could give everybody a password to go to that page and type in the password. Would the password be no government? I don't know. I'll think about that.
No go.
No go. Yeah. Okay. That'll work. Or no gov. Okay. Well, hey, let's get back talking to money. It came out that Greek authorities are to launch mass confiscation of safe deposit boxes, securities, homes in income tax evasion crackdown. They're going to do it. And I think it's a test because the German banks aren't going to loan them money because they need more money. They're broke. So anyhow, last week, the Greek parliament once again approved more austerity to unlock withheld Greek bailout funds in Brussels, a symbolic move which has little impact without any actual follow-through, like, for example, actually imposing austerity. And while Greeks have been very good in the former, in other words, in promises, they have been lacking in delivery. Well, that may be changing. According to Catherine Marini, Greek finance ministry inspectors are about to start seeking out the owners of all local undeclared properties, while the law will be amended to allow for financial products and the content of safe deposit boxes to be confiscated electronically. The Greek tax authorities will receive support from Land Register, and to that end, by the end of September, the inspectors are set to obtain access to the company's database to draw details on properties. Any taxpayers identified as having skipped the declaration of their assets to the tax authorities will be asked to comply and declare them, along with paying the tax and fines dictated by law. Catherine Marini also notes that that group is also waiting for Parliament to pass regulations permitting the mass confiscation of safe deposit box contents and financial assets such as securities. And the tax authorities will be able to issue online confiscation notices and immediately get their hands on the contents of safe deposit boxes, confiscating cash, precious stones, jewelry, and so on. Boy, does that throw up a bunch of red flags?
Just a few.
If they can get away with that in Greece, they can turn around and get away with it here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
So
you could almost even call it a beta test of sorts.
it is a beta test. And then the bail-ins, that was a beta test where they just went in and took money out of people's accounts.
Sure, yeah, exactly.
So the Greeks get screwed. The test case goes through, and the banks go, aha, we have a way to do it now. We've been playing with other people's money way too long through hedge funds and derivatives and everything else. So now we have to get our money back. So how are we going to do it? Convince the government to confiscate savings accounts, safety deposit boxes, and so forth. So personally, what do you do? That's going to be your decision. Do you keep enough money in the bank to pay your bills and keep everything someplace else? Do you convert your paper money into precious metals? What happens if the government says we're going to confiscate all the gold and silver? You're up the creek. It was done. At least gold was confiscated back during FDR's time. Franklin Delano or Delano Roosevelt, depending on how you want to pronounce it. But that's what they did. They confiscated the gold. And if you didn't turn it in, you had 10 years in jail. That's scary. Well, people in Greece are going to run into this. And if it works over there, what are you going to do here if suddenly the government says, oh, we have to confiscate the gold. We have to confiscate your silver. I'd be thinking about saying, guess what? I think we need a new government. We need to reelect or unelect the people that are there and reelect somebody different. Instead of having people there for 20 some years, soaking up the funds out of the taxpayers' money to line their pockets with, we need some new people in there. I don't care if they're Democrat. I don't care if they're Republican. I'd like to see them conservative, and I'd like to see them go in there and straighten things up instead of living like fat cats off our tax money. Oh, God, am I ranting or what?
Rant away.
Rant? Oh, you haven't seen me rant yet. I could be like Elmer Gantry. Remember that movie? No.
I don't remember that one, no.
You don't?
Which one is that one?
Oh, that was Burt, not Reynolds. The guy's first name was Burt. Anyhow, he played this part as Elmer Gantry, and he was a revivalist. And oh, he could just preach up a storm and just pound on the pulpit. But I think in the movie he was a shyster too. So, you know, I don't want to be called a shyster because I'm not. I'm very law-abiding. Yeah, and I'm conservative too. I'm not one of those snowflakes. So, you know, I hate to preach, but I'm sorry. Government has been the evil as of the last 20 years that has screwed the taxpayer and society over with. You've seen it. You've experienced it. We experienced 7 years, almost, well, 8 years under Obama, the head liar in charge. And you see what happens in the liberal Congress. You know, you're supposed to have Republicans and Democrats, and you have conservatives and liberals. Well, anymore, it's mostly a one-party system of nothing but liberals on both sides of the aisle. Some of them lie more than others, and it's scary. So I think we need to have a change in political thought. And no, communism doesn't work. Socialism doesn't work. It's just playing with other people's money, which is fun until you run out of money. Oh God, I'm preaching now. Let's get back to money here. Did you know that there was shocking admission from New York bankruptcy judge? He said Chapter 11 and 15 filings have exploded. There was a stunning soundbite was captured by Bloomberg during last week's event at the American Bankruptcy Institute. And according to judges speaking at the ABI conference this Thursday in Manhattan, the U.S. Bankruptcy Court for the Southern District of New York is seeing a sharp rise in cases this year, with Chapter 11 and Chapter 15 filing outpacing national averages. And the numbers for the Bankruptcy Court, which serves Manhattan, frankly, are horrifying, according to the report. Chapter 11s have tripled in the first quarter of the year, while Chapter 15s for companies seeking U.S. aid for a reorganization in a foreign court have increased sevenfold. Gee, the economy's so good that we have all these bankruptcies? Gee, personal bankruptcies, what, 7 years? No credit for 7 years. You got to pay with cash.
Yep.
Do without. Go to an attorney just to get a car if your car breaks down and you can't afford to fix it. A bunch of crazy stuff. And this happened to a friend of mine in Cincinnati, too. He was telling me about it, and luckily his 7 years is over and his credit is getting back to a lot better than what it was. Well, according to Zero Hedge and Credit Suisse, these 11 retailers will file for bankruptcy next, according to Fitch. Now, you know, you have S&P, you have Moody's, and you have Fitch. And Fitch's rating system, it's pretty good. But, you know, they were talking about the different companies that were going to go bankrupt. Could be Sears Holdings, could be Gymboree, could be Nine West Holdings, 99 cents only stores. True Religion Apparel, Charlotte Russe, Russe, Charming Charlie, NYDJ Apparel, Vince.A, Claire's Stores, Chino's Intermediate Holdings, or J. Crew Group. Is the economy really that good? You take a look at closing of stores. I mean, Radio Shack closed all of their stores, I think 550. Payless shoe stores is like 400 closed. Rue 21, 400 stores closed, and we just had one closing here in town. The Limited, 230 stores are closed. Family Christian, 240 stores. BB, that's BEBE, 240 I'm sorry, 180 stores. JCPenney's closing 138. American Apparel is 130. Kmart, 109 stores. CVS, 70. Macy's, looks like 65. Abercrombie and Fitch is 60. Sears is closing 41, and Gander Mountain's closing 20. That's the 2017 announced store closings. Gee, and the economy's that good? No, it isn't. It's bad. It's going to get worse. Just watch and see what happens. If you're not prepared, if you haven't put money aside, if you haven't built up your long-term food storage, you haven't maybe had some money to put into some precious metals, you don't have a way to store and purify water, you're in trouble. I'm sorry, people. Don't just start running out and buying everything in sight. You have to plan on what you're doing. Do it wisely. We take a look at what's the worst that could ever happen. Well, the problems that face Japan are similar to what we're seeing in the U.S., according to Lance Roberts at Real Investment Advice. A decline in savings rates to extremely low levels, which depletes productive investments. Well, savings rates. How many people in the United States could afford $400 in an emergency? Not many. Probably about a quarter of the country could. An aging demographic, I'll get that right, that is top heavy and drawing on social benefits at an advancing rate. That's us old folks. A heavily indebted economy with debt and GDP ratios above 100%. A decline in exports due to a weak global economic environment. An underemployed younger demographic. An inelastic supply of demand curve. Weak industrial production, and the report goes on and on and on. What's the worst that could happen? Everything collapses. Will the Fed cause it to collapse? Maybe. How about the powers that be, the hidden powers behind Washington? Will they cause a crash? Hey, we've got bubbles on car loans that are out there. We've got student loans. We're going to talk about that next. We got all kinds of stuff, housing bubbles that are starting to explode. They start going, and we're in a world of hurt, people. And if you're not prepared, you're in trouble. And if you haven't been listening to the show, you better start listening and get your friends listening to moneyandchange.weebly.com and listen to us on YouTube. And by the way, Ira, give them the YouTube address.
YouTube.com/C/Open Eyes Network is where you guys can find the archive of this show, as well as all the others that I'm a part of myself.
That's right. And I'll tell you what, we've had some good shows. I try not to put everybody to sleep. I try not to scare everybody, but I want to make sure that everybody understands we're not playing around in this show. I'm going to tell you the facts as they are. And if you don't want to listen, that's your problem. I'm trying to help people. I spend a lot of time during the research every week. I don't get paid a cent to help anybody. I'm doing it just out of my goodness of my heart, really. And if I can help one person, hey, it's worth it. If I can help 3 or 4 other people, that's great. You know, several years ago when I just started doing the show, a friend of mine, Scott Phillips from the American Wood Shop, which is a PBS show, stopped me. We were leaving City Hall after a meeting, and he said, hey, I got to tell you something. I said, what? He said, you know, you saved me a lot of money. I said, I did? How did I do that? He said, I listened to your show. I said, yeah, but you're busy doing yours. He said, no, I still listen to the show. He says, I still go to the website. You've got excellent information there. And I said, that's great if I can help you save some money. That's fantastic if I can help just one person, 2 people, 3 people, 5 people, 100 people. Pass the word. Tell them about moneyandchange.weebly.com. We don't sell anything. We're just trying to help people out. If I can do that, that's fine. And donate to the show. Well, you know, Jim Quinn at the Burning Platform blog said collecting $1 of student debt cost American taxpayers $38. Think about it, $38. And that's your government at work with your tax dollars. Loan billions to brain-dead teenagers so they can pretend to get smart in college, and when they fail miserably due to the fact that after 12 years of public school government indoctrination, they can't read, write, or add, and the government pays slimy collection agencies to get these unemployed dolts, D-O-L-T-S, to pay up. Not only has $600 billion of your tax dollars been pissed down the drain on loans and dumbasses, that's what it says. You now get to spend billions trying to collect the billions that will never be collected. Congrats, taxpayers. You'll soon have the privilege of repaying $137 billion worth of debt spent by entitled millennials on binge drinking trips to Cancun and drugs. Life, after all, is just a little bit better when we spread the wealth around, or we take the wealth away. The findings gleaned from the Bureau's analysis about 600,000 borrower accounts come as the Trump administration weighs a shakeup of the government student loan program. That's scary. That is scary. And the collectors go on and on. Now, there was a bill that was introduced allowing cancellation of over $1 trillion in student debt through bankruptcy. And sovereign man Simon Black gave that report, and he said, here are several of the most bizarre legal anecdotes to take place in the U.S. and around the globe over the past weeks, starting with a bill currently making its way through Congress, which is seeking to wipe out over $1 trillion in student loans. And what happens? We have to pay the bill. It's H.R. 2366. And if the bill passes, according to Simon Black, Congress, however, hundreds of billions of currently delinquent student loans, potentially as much as $1.4 trillion worth of student loan debt, would be eligible to be wiped out by declaring bankruptcy. Who gets stuck for the bill? We do. Who's going to pay it? You know, I had to take out a student loan one time, way back when. I had to pay it back. I did pay it back. I also worked to get my way through school. But this H.R. 233 to amend Title 11 of the United States Code to make student loans dischargeable in the House of Representatives on May 4th, 2017. These were the people that introduced the bill. Mr. Delaney for himself, Mr. Katko, K-A-T-K-O, Mr. Perlmutter, P-E-R-L-M-U-T-T-E-R, Mr. Lowenthal, Ms. Castor, C-A-S-T-O-R of Florida, Mr. Veazey, V-E-A-S-E-Y, Mr. Tonko, T-O-N-K-O, Mrs. Dingle, or Dingel, D-I-N-G-E-L, Miss Sinema, S-I-N-E-M-A, and Ms. Lofgren, L-O-F-G-R-E-N, introduced the following bill, which was referred to the Committee on the Judiciary. I would be getting on the phone and calling those guys and say, hey, get that bill and toss it. We're not going to assume any more debt. That's what the country doesn't need, is any more debt. We're almost $20 trillion in debt. Matter of fact, last time I looked was $19,920 billion in debt, and it was really moving on. We don't need to be in debt that much. We've got all these entitlement programs that need to be cut back. The government has to cut back on their spending. You know, if I was Trump, you know, I would have gone in and said, okay, there's a government spending freeze, or we need to change our budget, and every department will cut 10% of their budget this year. They'll cut 10% of their budget next year. They'll cut 10% the following year, which is 30%, but it's a 10% a year cut. No new hires. You'll have to work through your budget. Do it the sensible way. If he would have done that instead of taking out, 28% of the IRS, 23% of the State Department, and so forth, and spread it around, it probably would have been a little bit more palatable. IRS, hey, they could probably come up with a national sales tax on everything but medical and food. And guess what? We could probably pay the government debt down quite a bit, especially if you reduce about 50% of the IRS. They're all accountants and lawyers. They can find work someplace else. Let's talk about Ponzi schemes. What the Chicago teachers' pension would be called is if it were a hedge fund. and said long ago, way back in 2008, when most of today's hedge fund analysts were still stressing over what to wear to a prom, a man named Bernard Madoff, good old Bernie, was arrested for bilking unsuspecting investors out of $65 billion. Madoff ran what is traditionally referred to as a Ponzi scheme in which new investments were solicited as a means to fund massive redemptions that otherwise would have resulted in a collapse of his fund before the FBI finally caught up to the scheme. Well, ironically, many of our states and cities today are running a very similar Ponzi scheme, according to the report. Massively underfunded pension funds using taxpayer money nonetheless, but it's completely legal and not many people seem to notice and or care. Take, for example, the Chicago Teachers Pension Fund, or the CTPF, which has roughly $10 billion in assets to cover $21 billion in future payments and obligations. The fund has to pay out roughly $1.4 billion to retirees each year to cover benefits. And in 2016, it actually lost $28 billion on its $10 billion in assets. And then you take a look at the investment income, and then you take a look at what they charge for administration of the fund. It's scary. It really is. You never get out what you put into it. And are their investments always good? Probably not. According to Chicago City Wire, most financial grenades with a huge tail risk, the devastating consequences of America's failed public pensions will not be addressed until it's already too late. And unfortunately, with about $5 trillion in underfunded pension obligations in the public sector alone, the pension catastrophe will be too large for even America's overly generous taxpayers to bail out. I think next week we're going to talk about teachers everywhere, or not teachers, teenagers everywhere that don't understand money. I think we'll talk about that next week. But something happened that was funny when I was at Mercy West Hospital. They give you these little discs that light up and buzz and vibrate when they need you to come up to the desk to fill out paperwork or go back for surgery or whatever. And my friend told me, she said, hey, would you take this and just keep it? So I put it in my back pocket, and I had my tablet and everything else. And I had to go down and get something to eat and drink. And then I came back up. I was sitting there, I was talking to her, totally forgot about this thing. And all of a sudden it started to vibrate and buzz and so forth. And I jumped up out of this seat that I was in, and the people behind the desk started laughing. And they were trying to cover up their faces so that nobody knew that they were laughing. And I pointed over there, and there must have been about 20 people in that waiting room. I said, I know you're laughing. I can see you move. And they dropped the papers down. They were just shaking their heads and so forth. I said, sorry, guys, I forgot this was in my back pocket. Oh, well, how about this one? Two blondes with hammers. Lynn and Judy were doing some carpenter work at Habitat for Humanity. Lynn was nailing down the house siding, which would reach into her nail pouch and pull out a nail and either toss it over her shoulder or nail it in. And Judy looked at her, and figuring this was worth looking into, she said, why are you throwing those nails away? And Lynn says, well, when I pull a nail out of my pouch, half of them have the head on the wrong end, and I throw them away. And Judy looked at him and said, you moron. Those nails aren't defective. They're for the other side of the house. And with that bad joke, okay, we're going to bail out and call it a week. Check us out on moneyandchange.weebly.com, and pass the word on to your friends. Donate to the show to keep us all on the air. I don't get paid a cent. It goes for the ISP, the internet, and the electricity. Other than that, I donate my time, and hopefully I'm helping some people out. Tell your neighbors, tell your friends. And with that, Ira, that's all I've got this week.
Sounds great, Stu. Everybody out there, have a great week. Be safe and have fun. We'll talk to you again real soon.